So I played a game that has the title Milk Outside a Bag of Milk Outside a Bag of Milk, and I really liked it, so I wanted to talk about it without spoiling much of the game for anybody. I'll be calling this game Milk 2 for short, and that's because this is actually the second game in the series. The first one isn't really necessary, but it does provide a few contextual details about the main character that help add to the experiences of Milk 2. Milk 1 is also a super cheap purchase at a singular US dollar with like 10 minutes of runtime. In comparison, Milk 2 is $9 US and has about an hour of gameplay in a single run, though there are some additional endings you can read a guide for on the Steam Store's guides page if you need help unlocking them. It took me about 3 hours of gameplay in total to get all the endings since I took time to read through each ending. But before you go out and buy either of the games, I want to mention how these games definitely aren't for everyone. If you aren't particularly fond of games that are super light on gameplay, such as visual novels, or aren't particularly interested in artsy-centric games, you probably won't like Milk 1 or 2. I also wouldn't recommend these games to anybody who has trouble handling heavy topics related to psychosis, trauma, or death either of other people or by and for oneself. Anyway, I found Milk 2 in the new and trending page on the Steam store since it had come out just a few days prior to me making this review. Milk 2 is a continuation of its predecessor, which is called Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk, which I'll be calling Milk 1. Both Milk 1 and Milk 2 were developed by Nikita Krukov. In either game, you take the role of what I feel like is a fragmented piece of the main character's mind. Now, I could be, and am willing to be wrong, but I don't actually think you're playing as the main character because you aren't able to make decisions except when a specific condition is fulfilled. Yet, you're able to feel every thought and action in addition to hearing every word she says as if you are her. Your ability to make decisions or otherwise speak to the main character is only unlocked when she takes her medicine, in which case she begins to acknowledge you as someone who's there to talk to her. There's even a slight notion that there's other voices that she comes in contact with and she doesn't have any control over who she speaks to. In terms of the story and gameplay, in Milk 1, the objective is to acquire a bag of milk from the store. In Milk 2, the objective is to go to sleep. Both of those are particularly troublesome for her considering that she's neurodivergent, and how you go about accomplishing those objectives is the gameplay, and that's delivered in two distinct methods. In Milk 1, it's more akin to a visual novel choices matter set of rules, whereas Milk 2 is more of a point-and-click object finder. My favorite thing in both games overall is how the main character is designed and how information about her is obtained. If you combine Milk 1 and Milk 2, you have maybe about an hour and a half of gameplay, but you learn so much about her in such a short time. When you develop empathy for a character, it's a sign that they're built well and the delivery of information was properly paced. It's one thing to be sympathetic towards a character, and I feel like that can be easier for a lot of people since you're just judging their story from your perspective, but empathy can take time to develop since it can be intimate, complex, and empathy also requires a good amount of information. I feel like these games successfully delivered all of that by the time I explored what I felt like all that both games had to offer. I realized that when I started talking about this review, I made it seem like I was focusing solely on Milk 2, but after I played Milk 2, I felt obligated to go and play through Milk 1 after learning about how little of an investment it was. So in some essence, I'm advocating for both Milk 1 and 2 from a completionist perspective and just wanting to get the most out of both games. Now, the character design is backed up by the other artistic choices that are shown in the game, and one thing in particular was that I found myself heavily attracted to the art style in Milk 2. In comparison to Milk 1, Milk 2 has some thoroughly drawn backdrops, expressive body language and posture, and telling facial cues that weren't present in Milk 1. Milk 1 has some designs that are more abstract, distorted, or pixelated, but in Milk 1, things you can see are clearly represented, leaving only a little bit to the imagination. But there's enough of everything within Milk 1's brevity that successfully evokes a range of emotions. Milk 2 also features some expertly animated scenes by Alina Chrome, with backgrounds supported by Clematista, and while there aren't many of these scenes, they're alluring and wonderfully executed in terms of animation, color, and scoring. My appreciation of the animated scenes aren't meant to discredit the non-animated scenes, as many of them are well drawn out, have interesting perspectives, or are just overall pleasing to look at. I'd wear many of these scenes on clothes because of how much I love this game's aesthetic. Without droning on for too much longer, I'll briefly mention some of the other things that I really enjoyed. The music scoring in this game feels appropriate and captivating. My favorite songs are Concrete Circle and Death Music, ? They just add so much to the scenes that they're involved in, and it's almost hypnotizing how well tied together these various art sources are. The top music credit actually belongs to the developer, and you can find the whole official soundtrack on YouTube right now if you want to experience any parts of it, and I'll leave a link to the OST in the description of this video. I was also fond of a lot of the dialogues and descriptions. They come off as desperate and explicit in terms of how they are both used to convey the feelings, fears, and desires of the main character. For example, the way the character describes insomnia and how it affected her really left little to interpretation. I found that bit highly articulative, and it was easier to imagine myself in that situation because of the writer's help. It's with these two former attributes that contribute to the overall game's atmosphere, which isn't entirely horror-like, but actively invokes some type of discomfort so the game keeps you on edge. As far as things go that I didn't really like, and this is mostly out of my own greed, but I do wish Milk 2 was longer, that's not even a strong point or one I feel like has any value in pursuing much more than just being a comment. I enjoyed the game a lot, but wish there was more to see and experience. I don't feel like I personally didn't get enough value to justify the price tag, but I could see that being this game's weakest point to quite a few people. There's also some of the endings I don't quite understand, but I don't think everything in the game is meant to be understood. You aren't the main character, and if she doesn't want to reveal something to you, she doesn't have to, and in a way makes the interactions you have feel a little more genuine. I say this because I feel as if the game wants you to take the time to appreciate the things she does choose to share with you because of this intrapersonal / somewhat interpersonal dynamic. Some aspects of the game can be interpreted differently, and I think that's part of the charm that takes place over on the Steam store page's discussion board. Anyway, I enjoyed Milk 1 and 2. Fun isn't the right word to describe these games. Enthralling is probably a bit more accurate. If you like heavy, potentially depressing experiences that don't focus too much on gameplay but dig the artistic chops of a game, then this might be up your alley. Alrighty, all done here. Like the video if you like it, comment some thoughts, or subscribe if you want to see more. Bell gives you bonus points. To whom?